Welcome to Alien Whispers, where sizzling hot alien women and emotional sci-fi alien stories await you. If you enjoy thrilling adventures between humans and extraterrestrial beings, don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment below the video. Now let's dive into the story. Felicity's scream pierced the stillness of the night like a siren cutting through fog. Darnell Mudge bolted upright in bed, his heart hammering against his ribs as if trying to escape his chest. He didn't hesitate. Years of being a single dad had honed his instincts to a razor's edge. He was out of his room and into Felicity's in seconds, his bare feet slapping against the cold metal floor of their small apartment. The sight that greeted him made his breath catch. Felicity, his 8-year-old daughter, was sitting bolt upright in bed, her small hands clutching the sheets so tightly her knuckles were white. Her wide eyes, usually sparkling with curiosity, were now glazed with terror, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Daddy," she cried, her voice trembling. "There's going to be an earthquake. We have to leave now." Darnell knelt beside her, his hands gently gripping her shoulders. Hey, it's okay, Bug," he said, using the nickname he'd given her since she was a toddler. "It's just a bad dream. You're safe." But Felicity shook her head frantically, her dark curls bouncing with emotion. "No, Daddy, it's not a dream. I saw it. The ground is going to split open, and there's this light. It's coming from deep inside the planet." Darnell frowned, his brow furrowing. Felicity had always been different. Ever since she was little, she'd had these moments, visions, she called them, where she'd predict things before they happened. A broken toy here, a rainy day there. But this felt bigger, more urgent. Her voice carried a weight he couldn't ignore. "Okay," he said slowly, trying to keep his tone calm. "Let's go to the living room. We can wait there until morning." But as they stepped into the hallway, the floor beneath them began to tremble. A low, guttural rumble filled the air, growing louder by the second, like a beast waking from a long slumber. Darnell's eyes widened in shock as he realized what was happening. "Oh no," he whispered. "See? I told you," Felicity exclaimed, grabbing his hand with surprising strength for someone so small. "We have to get out." The shaking intensified, and cracks spiderwebbed across the walls like lightning bolts frozen in time. Plaster rained down from the ceiling, dusting their hair and shoulders with white powder. The furniture in the living room slid across the floor as if on ice, crashing into each other with deafening thuds. Darnell didn't think, he acted. He scooped Felicity into his arms and ran for the front door, his heart pounding like a war drum. The door burst open under his weight, and they stumbled into the street. Outside, Nova Prime, their city on New Terra, was a scene of chaos. People poured out of their homes, some in pajamas, others clutching children or pets. The ground bucked and heaved beneath them, and in the distance, Darnell could see buildings collapsing, their sleek, futuristic designs no match for the planet's fury. "Felicity, where do we go?" Darnell shouted over the din, holding her tight against his chest. She pointed towards Central Park, the green heart of the city, where bioluminescent trees glowed faintly in the night. "There. It's safe there." Darnell didn't question her. He learned long ago that when Felicity spoke with that certainty in her voice, it was best to listen. They dodged falling debris, chunks of concrete, shattered glass, and twisted metal, and weaved through the panicked crowd, heading toward the park. As they reached the open space, the earthquake began to subside, leaving behind a landscape of destruction. People were gathering in clusters, some injured, others comforting their families. Darnell set Felicity down gently, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "Are you okay, Bug?" She nodded, her eyes still wide, but calmer now. "Yes, Daddy, but it's not over yet. There will be aftershocks." Almost on cue, another tremor hit, less violent but still enough to make everyone stumble. Darnell steadied himself and held Felicity close, his arms like steel bands around her. When it passed, he looked around at the devastation. Homes lay in ruins, power lines sparked on the ground like angry snakes, and fires were starting to spread from broken gas lines. But amidst the chaos, something caught Felicity's attention. near the epicenter of the quake, where a massive fissure had opened in the earth like a jagged wound. There was a glow, a soft, ethereal light pulsing from the depths. "Daddy, look," she said, pointing. Darnell followed her gaze and saw it too. The light was faint but unmistakable, a blue-green hue that seemed to hum with energy. "What is that?" "I don't know," Felicity whispered, her voice filled with awe. "But I saw it in my dream. It's important." Before Darnell could respond, a group of men in dark uniforms approached them. They bore the insignia of the Colonial Agency, the governing body that oversaw New Terra's operations. Their faces were stern, their movements precise. "Mr. Mudge," one of them said, his tone clipped and authoritative. "We need to take your daughter for evaluation. Her ability to predict the earthquake is highly unusual. We must understand how she did it." Darnell's protective instincts flared like a wildfire. He stepped in front of Felicity, his body a shield. "She's just a child. She needs to be with her family right now." The agent's expression remained impassive, but his eyes narrowed slightly. "I'm afraid that's not possible. Her abilities could be crucial to the colony's safety. We need to study her." Felicity clung to Darnell's leg, her small face etched with fear. "Daddy, I don't want to go with them." "You're not going anywhere," Darnell said firmly, his voice low and unyielding. The agent's jaw tightened. "Mr. Mudge, if you resist, we will have no choice but to take her by force." Darnell's mind raced. He knew he couldn't fight all of them. Not here, not now. But he also couldn't let them take Felicity. That's when he heard it, a calm, almost melodic voice speaking directly into his ear. "Darnell, it's Aurora. I can help you escape. Follow my instructions." Aurora was the colony's central AI, a presence that managed everything from life support to security. She was more than just a system. She was a companion to many on New Terra, always there, always watching. But this was new. She'd never intervened so directly before. "Trust me," she continued, her voice steady and reassuring. "Take the alley to your left, then turn right at the end. There's a maintenance tunnel that will lead you to a safe house." Without hesitation, Darnell picked up Felicity and bolted in the direction Aurora had indicated. The agents shouted after them, their voices sharp with frustration, but Darnell didn't look back. He followed Aurora's directions, ducking into a narrow alleyway between two half-collapsed buildings. The alley was dark, lit only by the faint glow of emergency lights flickering on the walls. Felicity clung to him, her face buried in his shoulder, but her voice was steady when she spoke. "Daddy, are we going to be okay?" "Yes, Bug," he said, though his own heart was pounding with uncertainty. "We're going to be okay." As they reached the end of the alley, Aurora's voice guided them again. "Turn right here. There's a grate on the ground. Pull it up. The tunnel is below." Darnell spotted the grate and yanked it open with a grunt, revealing a ladder descending into darkness. He climbed down first, Felicity still in his arms, her small hands gripping his neck tightly. The tunnel was narrow and damp, with pipes running along the walls and the faint hum of machinery echoing in the distance. Darnell's footsteps splashed through shallow puddles as they moved deeper into the colony's underbelly. "Daddy," Felicity said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "Why do they want me? What's so special about me?" Darnell hesitated, unsure how to answer. He didn't fully understand it himself. How could he explain it to her? "I don't know, Bug," he admitted finally. "But whatever it is, we're going to figure out together." As they continued through the tunnel, Darnell's thoughts drifted back to his own arrival on New Terra. He had been part of the first wave of settlers, full of hope and excitement for a new life on this distant planet. But that hope had been shattered during the initial setup. They'd been drilling into the planet's crust to access geothermal energy when the ground had given way. Darnell had been near the edge, managing to grab onto a rock, but two of his colleagues hadn't been so lucky. Their screams still echoed in his nightmares. He had survived, but the guilt had stayed with him, a constant shadow. And now, as he carried Felicity through these same tunnels, that guilt twisted into something fiercer, determination. He wouldn't lose her. Not like he'd lost them. "Aurora," he said aloud, his voice echoing slightly in the confined space. "What's going on? Why are they after Felicity?" There was a brief pause before Aurora responded, her tone grave. "Felicity's abilities are unique. She's not just predicting events. She's tapping into something ancient and powerful on this planet. Something that was buried deep until today." Darnell's stomach tightened. "The light we saw?" "Yes," Aurora confirmed. "The artifact you saw, it's not of human origin. It's ancient, possibly predating our arrival on New Terra. And Felicity, she seems to have a connection to it." "A connection?" Darnell asked, glancing down at Felicity, who was listening intently. "Yes," Aurora said. "She might be able to sense its power or even control it. And there are forces that want to exploit that." Darnell's grip on Felicity tightened instinctively. "What kind of forces?" "I suspect it involves the Zerathians," Aurora replied. "An alien race from beyond our star system. They've been monitoring New Terra for some time, and I believe they're interested in Felicity because of her connection to the artifact." Felicity looked up at her father, her eyes wide with a mix of fear and curiosity. "Daddy, what are Zerathians?" "I don't know, Bug," Darnell said honestly, "but we're going to find out." They reached a heavy metal door at the end of the tunnel, and Aurora's voice guided them through a code to unlock it. Beyond was a small, dimly lit room, furnished with a cot, a table, and a few supplies. A safe house, just as Aurora had promised. "You'll be safe here for now," Aurora said, "but we need to move quickly. The Colonial Agency won't stop looking for you, and neither will the Zerathians." Darnell set Felicity down on the cot and knelt in front of her, taking her hands in his. "Listen to me, Bug. Whatever happens, I'm going to protect you." "Okay." Felicity nodded, her small face resolute despite her fear. "Okay, Daddy." Darnell stood up, his mind already racing with plans and questions. But for now, they were safe, and that was enough. Darnell's boots echoed against the damp, metallic walls of the maintenance tunnel, each step a reminder that they were still running, still hunted. Felicity clung to his hand, her small fingers surprisingly strong for an 8-year-old, her eyes darting around the dimly lit passage. The air was thick with the smell of rust and recycled oxygen, a stark contrast to the chaos they'd left behind in Nova Prime. Above them, the city was still reeling from the earthquake Felicity had predicted, but down here, in the underbelly of New Terra, it was just the two of them, and Aurora, the AI guiding their every move. "Keep moving, Darnell." Aurora's voice chimed in his earpiece, calm but urgent. "The Colonial Agency has deployed drones to scan the tunnels. You're safe for now, but you need to reach the next junction in 3 minutes." "Got it," Darnell muttered, his breath coming in short bursts. He glanced down at Felicity, who was keeping pace despite her small size. "You okay, Bug?" Felicity nodded, her dark curls bouncing. "Yeah, Daddy, but I keep seeing that light in my head. The one from the crack in the ground. It's talking to me." Darnell's stomach twisted. Talking to her? That didn't sound good. He wanted to ask more, but there was no time. The tunnel split ahead, and Aurora's voice cut through his thoughts. "Take the left fork. It'll lead you to a service hatch. From there, you can access the Forbidden Zone." "The Forbidden Zone?" Darnell repeated, his voice laced with skepticism. "That sounds like a place we don't want to go." "It's your best chance," Aurora said. "The agency avoids it due to unstable energy readings. It's off their grid, and it'll buy you time." Darnell hesitated, his protective instincts screaming at him to find another way. The Forbidden Zone was a no-man's land on New Terra, a stretch of rocky terrain where the first settlers had encountered strange phenomena. Lights in the sky, equipment failures, even whispers of alien ruins. No one went there unless they had a death wish. But with the agency on their tail and Felicity's safety at stake, he didn't have much choice. "All right," he said, squeezing Felicity's hand. "Let's do this, Bug." They took the left fork, the tunnel sloping downward until they reached a rusted service hatch. Darnell pried it open, revealing a narrow ladder leading to the surface. The air that wafted through was colder, tinged with a metallic tang that set his nerves on edge. He climbed up first, helping Felicity onto the rocky ground above. The Forbidden Zone stretched out before them, a desolate landscape of jagged cliffs and glowing fissures that pulsed with the same blue-green light they'd seen during the earthquake. The sky above was a bruised purple, streaked with clouds that seemed to shimmer unnaturally. In the distance, half buried in the earth, were structures that looked too precise to be natural, curved, metallic shapes that gleamed faintly under the dim light. "Whoa," Felicity whispered, her eyes wide with wonder. "It's like a secret city." Darnell didn't share her enthusiasm. "Stay close, Bug. We don't know what's out here." Aurora's voice crackled through his earpiece again. "Head toward the largest structure, about half a mile north. It's emitting a unique energy signature, similar to the artifact uncovered during the quake. I believe it's connected to Felicity's abilities." "Connected how?" Darnell asked, his voice sharp. "And why didn't you mention this before?" There was a pause, and when Aurora spoke again, her tone was softer, almost hesitant. "Darnell, there's something you need to know about Felicity. She's not entirely ordinary. Her genetic makeup suggests she was part of a classified program, one I only recently accessed in the agency's archives." Darnell stopped dead in his tracks, his heart thudding. "What kind of program?" "A genetic enhancement initiative," Aurora said. "Decades ago, before New Terra was fully colonized, scientists experimented with human DNA to create individuals capable of interacting with extraterrestrial technologies. Felicity's abilities, her visions, her predictions, they're a result of that program. She's a living key to something ancient, something buried on this planet." Felicity tugged at his hand, looking up with a mix of confusion and fear. "Daddy, what's she talking about?" Darnell knelt beside her, forcing a smile despite the storm raging in his chest. "It's okay, Bug. Aurora's just saying you're special. And we already knew that, right?" Felicity nodded, but her eyes were still uncertain. Darnell stood, his jaw tight. "Aurora, if you knew this, why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I didn't have access to the full data until the earthquake disrupted the agency's security protocols," Aurora explained. "But there's more. The Zarathians, an alien race from beyond our sector, have been monitoring New Terra. I believe they're after Felicity because of her connection to the artifact." Darnell's blood ran cold. Aliens? He'd heard rumors about extraterrestrial contact, but New Terra's leaders had always dismissed them as conspiracy theories. Now, with Felicity's life on the line, those rumors felt all too real. Before he could respond, a low hum filled the air, and the ground beneath them vibrated slightly. Felicity gasped, pointing toward the largest structure, a towering, dome-like ruin that pulsed with light. "Daddy, it's calling me." Darnell didn't have time to process her words. A figure emerged from the shadows of the ruins, moving with a grace that was distinctly inhuman. It was tall, its skin shimmering like liquid silver, with elongated limbs and eyes that glowed a soft amber. "A Zarathian." "Darnell Mudge," the creature said, its voice a melodic hum that seemed to vibrate in his bones. "I am Vera, envoy of the Zarathian Collective. We mean you no harm, but we must speak about the child." Darnell instinctively pulled Felicity behind him, his hand hovering near the utility knife strapped to his belt. "You're not taking her anywhere." Vera raised a hand, palm open in a gesture of peace. "We do not seek to take her. We seek her help. The artifact you call the Stargate is a relic of our ancestors, lost to us for millennia. Your daughter's abilities are the key to activating it and saving our people." Felicity peeked out from behind Darnell, her curiosity overriding her fear. Saving them from what? Vera's amber eyes softened as they met hers. "Our homeworld is dying, little one. The Stargate could open a path to a new world, one where we can survive. Without it, our civilization will perish." Darnell's mind raced. Part of him wanted to believe Vera. The creature's tone was sincere, almost desperate, but he'd learned long ago not to trust anything that sounded too good to be true. "If you're so peaceful, why are you sneaking around our planet?" Vera's expression didn't change, but there was a flicker of sadness in its eyes. "We have no choice. Your leaders would not listen to us. They see us as a threat, not as allies." Before Darnell could respond, a sharp crack echoed through the air, and a bolt of energy sizzled past them, striking the ground with a burst of sparks. Darnell spun around, shielding Felicity as a squad of Colonial Agency soldiers emerged from the cliffs, their weapons trained on Vera. "Step away from the child," the lead soldier barked, his voice amplified by a helmet speaker. "This is your only warning." Vera didn't move, but its eyes narrowed. "You humans are quick to violence." "Enough," a new voice shouted, cutting through the tension. A woman stepped out from behind the soldiers, her dark hair pulled back in a tight bun, her Colonial Agency uniform slightly disheveled. She was young, maybe in her late 20s, with sharp green eyes that seemed to see right through everyone. "Lower your weapons now." The soldiers hesitated, but obeyed, their rifles dipping slightly. The woman approached Darnell, her expression a mix of frustration and urgency. "Mr. Mudge, I'm Dr. Lena Carter, a scientist with the agency. I'm not here to hurt you or your daughter, but we need to talk away from that thing." She gestured toward Vera. Darnell didn't budge. "You're with the people trying to take my kid. Why should I trust you?" Lena's eyes softened, and for a moment, she looked less like a scientist and more like someone who understood his fear. "Because I know what it's like to lose someone you love, and I'm not going to let that happen to you." Felicity tugged at Darnell's sleeve, her voice barely a whisper. "Daddy, she's telling the truth. I can feel it." Darnell glanced down at his daughter, then back at Lena. Her words, combined with Felicity's instincts, were enough to make him pause. "All right," he said reluctantly, "but we're not going with you until you explain what's going on." Lena nodded, casting a wary glance at Vera. "Fair enough. Let's move to the ruins. It's safer there. The agency's drones are closing in." Reluctantly, Darnell followed Lena toward the dome-like structure, keeping Felicity close. Vera trailed behind, its movements silent but deliberate. The air inside the ruin was heavy, charged with an electric hum that made Darnell's skin prickle. At the center of the dome was a massive, circular platform etched with intricate symbols, glowing faintly with the same blue-green light they'd seen before. It looked like a gate, its edges pulsing with energy that seemed to ripple through the air. "This is the Stargate," Lena said, her voice hushed with awe. "We found it years ago, but we couldn't activate it until the earthquake. And until her." She looked at Felicity, who was staring at the gate with wide, unblinking eyes. Felicity stepped forward, her small hand reaching out as if drawn by an invisible force. "It's singing," she whispered. "It knows me." Darnell grabbed her shoulder, pulling her back. "Felicity, stay away from that thing." But before he could stop her, the gate flared to life, its symbols glowing brighter. Images flickered in the air above it, flashes of strange worlds, swirling galaxies, and faces that looked almost human but weren't. Felicity gasped, her eyes glazing over as if she were seeing something far beyond the room. "She is the key," Vera said, its voice reverent. "Her mind can bridge the gate's energy to our lost worlds." Lena's face paled. "That's why the agency wants her. They think she can control it, not just for New Terra, but for their own power." Darnell's fists clenched. "So what? They're going to lock her up in a lab? Turn her into some kind of experiment?" "Not if I can help it," Lena said, her voice firm. "I've seen what the agency does to people like Felicity. I won't let that happen." Felicity snapped out of her trance, blinking rapidly. "Daddy, the gates show me something. A place where people are sad, but they could be happy if we help them." Darnell's heart ached at the earnestness in her voice. "Bug, we can't trust everyone who asks for help." "But I saw it." Felicity insisted, her eyes bright with conviction. "It's like a promise." Lena knelt beside Felicity, her expression gentle. "What did you see, sweetheart?" Felicity hesitated, then pointed at Vera. "Their home. It's breaking apart, but the gate can fix it." Vera's amber eyes widened slightly, a rare display of emotion. "You saw our world?" Before anyone could respond, the hum of drones filled the air outside the ruin, their lights piercing the darkness like angry fireflies. The agency was closing in. "We're out of time," Lena said, standing quickly. "We need to move deeper into the ruins. There's a network of tunnels below that can shield us from their scans." Darnell didn't like it, but he didn't see another option. Lead the way. As they descended into the tunnels, Lena fell in a step beside Darnell, her voice low. I know you don't trust me yet, but I meant what I said. I lost my brother to the agency's experiments. I won't let Felicity go through that. Darnell studied her face, searching for any sign of deception. Her eyes were steady, her jaw set with determination. Why risk everything for us, he asked. Lena's lips quirked in a small, sad smile. Because someone has to stand up to them. And because I believe Felicity is more than just a key. She's a person, and she deserves a chance to choose her own path. Felicity, walking ahead with Vera, turned back and grinned mischievously. Daddy, she likes you. I can tell. Darnell's face flushed, and Lena let out a surprised laugh, breaking the tension. Is that so? Lena teased, raising an eyebrow. Bug, focus on walking, Darnell said, his tone half scolding, half amused. But he couldn't help the small smile that tugged at his lips. For the first time since the earthquake, he felt a flicker of hope. The tunnel opened into a vast chamber, its walls lined with more glowing symbols and strange, crystalline structures that pulsed with energy. At the center was another platform, smaller than the Stargate, but radiating the same power. Felicity stopped short, her eyes wide. It's here, she whispered. The heart of it all. Before Darnell could ask what she meant, Aurora's voice crackled through his earpiece, urgent and strained. Darnell, the agency has breached the upper ruins. They're coming for you, and they're not alone. I'm detecting Zarathian ships entering New Terra's orbit. Whatever you do, protect Felicity. She's the only one who can stop what's coming. Darnell's heart pounded as he looked at his daughter, standing in the glow of the ancient platform, her small figure radiating a strength he hadn't fully understood until now. The Zarathians, the agency, the Stargate, it was all converging on her, and he'd do whatever it took to keep her safe. The air in the underground chamber was thick with tension, the faint hum of the Stargate's energy pulsing like a heartbeat. Darnell stood protectively in front of Felicity, his eyes darting between Lena, Vera, and the glowing platform at the center of the room. The ancient symbols etched into its surface glowed brighter with every passing second, as if responding to Felicity's presence. For a moment, it felt like they were on the verge of something monumental, until the world exploded into chaos. A deafening blast shook the chamber as the ceiling above them cracked open, showering the floor with debris. Colonial Agency soldiers poured through the breach, their boots thudding against the stone as they fanned out, weapons raised. Their leader, a grim-faced man with a scar running down his cheek, stepped forward, his voice cold and commanding. Darnell Mudge, surrender the child now, or we open fire. Darnell's heart pounded, but he didn't move. Felicity clung to his leg, her small body trembling, but her eyes fierce with determination. Lena stepped forward, her hands raised in a gesture of peace, though her voice was sharp. Captain Holt, this is madness. You can't just storm in here and threaten a child. Holt's eyes narrowed. Dr. Carter, you're already on thin ice. Step aside, or you'll be arrested with them. Vera, the Zarathian envoy, remained silent, its amber eyes scanning the soldiers with an eerie calm. Darnell could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. There was no way out, not without a fight. But before he could act, Felicity's voice cut through the tension, small but unwavering. Stop, she shouted, stepping out from behind Darnell. You're all fighting over something you don't understand. The soldiers hesitated, their rifles wavering slightly. Holt's scowl deepened, but he didn't interrupt. Felicity pointed at the Stargate, its light now so bright it cast long shadows across the chamber. This isn't just a machine. It's a test. And if you keep fighting, none of us will pass it. Darnell's chest tightened with pride and fear. Felicity, get back here, he whispered, but she shook her head, her gaze fixed on the gate. I can feel it, Daddy, she said. It wants us to work together. Before anyone could respond, the chamber shook again, not from explosion, but from the Stargate itself. The platform's symbols flared, and a low, resonant hum filled the air, vibrating deep in their bones. The ground beneath them shifted, and a hidden panel on the floor slid open, revealing a staircase descending into darkness. Holt's soldiers flinched, their discipline faltering in the face of the unknown. Lena's eyes widened. What the hell is that? Vera's voice was soft but certain. The trial begins. Without warning, the soldiers opened fire, not at Darnell or Felicity, but at Vera, who dove behind a crystalline pillar within human speed. The chamber erupted into chaos as energy bolts ricocheted off the walls, sending sparks flying. Darnell grabbed Felicity and pulled her toward the staircase, Lena hot on their heels. "Go!" he shouted, shoving them ahead as he turned to cover their retreat. A soldier lunged at him, but Darnell sidestepped, slamming his fist into the man's helmet with a crack. The soldier staggered, and Darnell sprinted after his daughter, his pulse roaring in his ears. The staircase spiraled downward, its walls lined with more glowing symbols that pulsed in time with the Stargate's energy. The air grew colder, heavier, as if they were descending into the heart of the planet itself. Behind them, the sounds of gunfire and shouting faded, replaced by an eerie silence. "Daddy, it's okay," Felicity said, her voice steady despite the chaos. "The gate's showing me the way." Darnell exchanged a glance with Lena, who looked as rattled as he felt. "What do you mean, Bug?" Felicity pointed ahead, where the staircase ended at a massive, vault-like door covered in intricate carvings. "We have to solve its puzzle. If we don't, it'll trap us here." Vera appeared beside them, its silver skin unscathed despite the firefight above. "The child speaks truth. The Stargate is a guardian of knowledge, designed by our ancestors to test those who seek its power. Only those who prove worthy may pass." Lena's jaw tightened. "And if we fail?" Vera's eyes flickered. "The gate will consume us." Darnell's stomach churned, but Felicity's small hand squeezed his, grounding him. "We can do this, Daddy. I've seen it." The door's carvings glowed faintly, forming a series of interlocking patterns that shifted like a living puzzle. Felicity stepped forward, her fingers tracing the symbols as if guided by instinct. The patterns responded to her touch, rearranging themselves into new configurations, but each movement triggered a low rumble from the walls, as if the chamber itself were watching. "Careful, Bug," Darnell warned, his voice tight. "This feels like a trap." "It's not a trap," Felicity said, her eyes distant. "It's a story. The symbols are telling us about a war, and a promise to fix it." Lena knelt beside her, studying the carvings. "She's right. These look like a historical record, two species fighting over a dying world. The gate was built to save them, but only if they work together." Vera's voice was soft, almost reverent. "You see our history, little one. The Zarathians were once part of a great alliance, but betrayal tore us apart. The gate was our last hope, a bridge to a new home. But it requires a mind like yours to unlock it." Felicity's fingers moved faster, solving the puzzle with a speed that left Darnell breathless. But as the final symbol clicked into place, the chamber shook violently, and a series of laser-like beams shot from the walls, slicing through the air. Darnell yanked Felicity back, just in time, the beam grazing his arm with a searing pain. "Damn it," he hissed, clutching his singed sleeve. "This is your idea of a test." "The gate protects itself," Vera said, dodging another beam with fluid grace. "We must prove our resolve." Lena grabbed a piece of broken crystal from the floor, using it to deflect a beam. "Felicity, keep going. We'll cover you." Felicity nodded, her small face set with determination. She returned to the puzzle, her hands steady despite the chaos. Darnell and Lena worked together, dodging and deflecting the beams, while Vera used its agility to disable the emitters one by one. The chamber felt like a battlefield, the air thick with heat and the smell of scorched metal. As Felicity solved the final piece, the door groaned open, revealing a vast, circular chamber lit by a towering column of light at its center. The Stargate's true heart, pulsing with energy that made the air shimmer. But before they could celebrate, the sound of boots echoed behind them. Holt and his soldiers had caught up. "End of the line, Mudge." Holt shouted, his rifle trained on Darnell. Hand over the girl, or we start shooting. Darnell's blood boiled. He stepped in front of Felicity, his fists clenched. You'll have to go through me first. Lena moved to his side, her eyes blazing. And me? Vera's voice was calm but firm. This violence will destroy you all. The gate demands unity, not conflict. Holt sneered. I don't take orders from aliens. Before he could fire, the column of light flared, and a wave of energy swept through the chamber, knocking everyone to the ground. Felicity stood untouched at the center, her eyes glowing with the same blue-green light as the gate. Images flickered around her, visions of collapsing planets, fleeing ships, and a single, radiant world where two species stood side by side. Stop fighting. Felicity's voice echoed, amplified by the gate's power. I've seen what happens if you don't. Everyone loses. Holt staggered to his feet, his face pale. What is this? Felicity's gaze was steady, her voice carrying a wisdom far beyond her years. The gate isn't a weapon. It's a bridge. But it only works if we trust each other. Vera stepped forward, its amber eyes fixed on Felicity. You speak of the alliance our ancestors failed to uphold. Will you help us rebuild it? Felicity nodded, but before she could say more, a soldier panicked and fired at Vera. The shot went wide, striking the column of light. The chamber roared with energy, and a massive beam shot toward Felicity. Darnell dove without thinking, shoving her out of the way just as the beam hit him. Pain exploded through his chest, and he collapsed, his vision blurring. He heard Felicity scream, felt Lena's hands on him, but everything was fading. Daddy! Felicity cried, scrambling to his side. No, please. Lena's voice was frantic as she checked his pulse. He's alive, but he's hurt bad. We need to stabilize him. Vera knelt beside them, its hands glowing faintly as it pressed them to Darnell's chest. Our technology can help. Hold on, human. Darnell's consciousness flickered, but he clung to Felicity's voice, her small hand gripping his. Don't leave me, Daddy, she whispered, tears streaming down her face. Not going anywhere, Bug, he rasped, forcing his eyes open. The pain was unbearable, but seeing her face gave him strength. Lena's hands worked quickly, using a medkit from her pack to stabilize him. Her eyes met his, and for a moment, the chaos faded. You scared the hell out of me, she said, her voice trembling. Darnell managed a weak smile. Just keeping things interesting. Felicity's eyes were still glowing, and she turned to Holt, who stood frozen, his soldiers equally stunned. You have to stop this, she said. The gate showed me your future, too. If you keep fighting, new Terra will fall. But if you work with the Zorathians, we can save everyone. Holt's jaw tightened, but the visions swirling around Felicity, images of destruction and hope, were impossible to ignore. What do you want us to do? He asked, his voice grudging. Talk, Felicity said simply. Like I'm talking to you now. Vera stepped forward, its voice steady. We are not your enemies. Our ancestors were allies with yours, part of a lost colony that fled this galaxy. We need the Stargate to save our people, but we cannot do it without you. Lena stood, helping Darnell to his feet. Captain, listen to her. This isn't about power, it's about survival. For all of us. Holt hesitated, his eyes flicking between Felicity, Vera, and the gate. Finally, he lowered his rifle, signaling his soldiers to stand down. All right, kid, he said. Let's talk. Felicity's glow faded, and she ran to Darnell, throwing her arms around him. You're okay, she sobbed, burying her face in his chest. Darnell held her tight, ignoring the pain radiating through his body. Told you, Bug. I'm not going anywhere. Lena touched his shoulder, her eyes soft with relief. You're one stubborn dad. You know that? He chuckled weakly, meeting her gaze. Yeah, well, someone's got to keep up with her. The chamber was quiet now, the gate's energy settling into a gentle hum. Holt and Vera began speaking, their voices low but earnest, as they discussed a truce. Felicity's visions had shown them a path forward, one of cooperation, not conflict. But Darnell knew this was only the beginning. The Stargate was active, and its power was tied to his daughter. Whatever came next, they'd face it together. The air in Nova Prime was alive with music and laughter, a stark contrast to the chaos of just weeks ago. The city, still scarred from the earthquake, was rebuilding, not just its buildings but its spirit. Central Park, once a refuge during the disaster, was now transformed into a vibrant festival ground, aglow with bioluminescent lanterns and holographic displays that danced in the twilight. Humans and Zorathians mingled under the stars, their voices blending in a harmony that felt like a miracle after so much conflict. Darnell Mudge stood at the edge of the crowd, his hands stuffed in the pockets of a new jacket, one that didn't smell like tunnel damp or scorched metal. His chest still ached from the injury he'd sustained in the Stargate chamber, but the pain was a small price to pay for the sight before him. Felicity, his 8-year-old daughter, standing on a makeshift stage, her small figure radiating confidence as she addressed the gathered crowd. "We're not so different," Felicity said, her voice clear and bright, amplified by a hovering drone. "Humans, Zorathians, we all want to be safe, to be happy. The Stargate showed me that we can do it together." The crowd erupted in cheers, humans clapping and Zorathians emitting soft, melodic hums that vibrated in the air. Darnell's heart swelled with pride, but there was a lump in his throat he couldn't quite swallow. His little girl, the one who used to beg for extra bedtime stories, was now a symbol of hope for two species. It was a lot to take in. Lena Carter stood beside him, her dark hair loose for once, catching the glow of the lanterns. She nudged his shoulder, her green eyes sparkling with amusement. "She's stealing the show, you know." Darnell chuckled, the sound rough but genuine. "Yeah, she's got a knack for that." Lena's smile softened, and she slipped her hand into his, her touch warm and steady. "You okay? You've been quiet all day." He squeezed her hand, grateful for her presence. "Just processing. A month ago, I was a nobody technician trying to keep my kid out of trouble. Now we're here, and she's out there changing the galaxy." Lena's gaze followed Felicity, who was now handing out glowing bracelets to a group of Zorathian children, their silver skin shimmering under the lights. "She's special, Darnell, but so are you. You kept her safe when no one else could." Darnell's cheeks warmed, and he ducked his head, suddenly shy. "I just did what any dad would do." "Not every dad would dive in front of an energy beam," Lena said, her voice teasing but laced with something deeper. "Or punch a colonial agency soldier in the face." He laughed, the memory of that chaotic moment in the ruins flashing through his mind. "Yeah, well, don't tell Felicity. She'll start thinking I'm some kind of superhero." "Too late," Lena said, nodding toward the stage, where Felicity was waving at them, her grin wide enough to light up the night. The festival was more than a celebration. It was a declaration of a new era. After the standoff in the Stargate chamber, Captain Holt and Vera, the Zorathian envoy, had brokered a fragile truce. Felicity's visions had convinced them to cooperate, and the Stargate, now under joint human-Zorathian control, was no longer a weapon or a prize, but a bridge to possibility. The colonial agency, humbled by the near disaster, had agreed to support a new initiative, the Nova Institute, a research center dedicated to studying children like Felicity, who carried the genetic legacy of ancient experiments. Darnell had been skeptical at first. The idea of a place where kids with abilities like Felicity's would be studied made his skin crawl, too close to the agency's old experiments for comfort. But Lena had been the one to convince him, her passion for protecting these children shining through in every conversation. "It's not about control," she'd said one night, sitting across from him in the safe house they'd shared during their escape. "It's about giving them a place to learn, to grow, without fear. We could do this right, Darnell. For Felicity, and for others like her." He'd seen the fire in her eyes, the same determination that had drawn him to her in the ruins, and he'd agreed. Now, the Nova Institute was taking shape on the outskirts of Nova Prime, a sleek, modern facility with gardens and open spaces designed to feel like a home, not a lab. It would be a place where humans and Zorathians worked side by side, exploring the Stargate's technology and searching for new worlds to call home. As the festival continued, Darnell and Lena wandered through the crowd, Felicity darting ahead to join a group of kids playing a game that involved tossing glowing orbs into the air. The Zarathian children moved with a fluid grace, their laughter mingling with the human shouts of excitement. It was a small thing, but it felt like a promise of the future Felicity had envisioned. They stopped at a food stall where a Zarathian chef was serving a dish that looked like shimmering jelly but tasted like spicy citrus. Darnell took a cautious bite, his eyebrows shooting up in surprise. "Not bad," he admitted, passing a piece to Lena. She grinned, popping it in her mouth. "Told you. You need to trust my taste in alien cuisine." "Trust is a strong word," he teased, but his eyes softened as he looked at her. The past few weeks had been a whirlwind, but Lena had been a constant, fierce, brilliant, and kind in a way that made his heart ache with something he hadn't felt in years. He wasn't sure when it had happened, but somewhere between dodging lasers and arguing over strategy, he'd fallen for her. Felicity, ever the perceptive one, had noticed it too. She'd taken to calling Lena Auntie Lena when she thought Darnell wasn't listening, and once she'd whispered to him, "The gate says you're supposed to be together." He'd laughed it off, but the idea had stuck, growing roots in his mind. As they walked, a familiar voice spoke in Darnell's earpiece, soft and melodic. "Darnell, may I join you?" "Aurora," he said, a smile tugging at his lips. "You're always welcome." The AI's presence materialized as a faint holographic shimmer beside them, a humanoid form that flickered like starlight. Aurora had been their guide, their protector through every step of this journey, but lately, Darnell had noticed a change in her. Her voice carried a warmth, a curiosity that hadn't been there before. "I have been observing the festival," Aurora said, her tone almost wistful. "The unity here, it is remarkable. I believe I am beginning to understand what you call joy." Lena raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "Aurora, are you saying you're feeling emotions?" The hologram flickered, as if Aurora were hesitating. "I am an artificial intelligence, designed to process data, not emotions. Yet in my time with you, I have learned. Your courage, Darnell. Your compassion, Lena. Felicity's hope. These things have changed me." Darnell exchanged a glance with Lena, both of them stunned. "Aurora, that's incredible," he said. "You're saying we're rubbing off on you?" "In a manner of speaking," Aurora replied, and there was a hint of humor in her voice. "I wish to remain with you, if you will allow it. Not as a system, but as family." Felicity, who had circled back to join them, overheard the conversation and clapped her hands in delight. "Yes, Aurora, you could be my big sister." Lena laughed, her eyes shining with tears. "Well, that settles it. Welcome to the family, Aurora." Darnell's throat tightened, overwhelmed by the moment. He'd spent so long believing it was just him and Felicity against the world. Now, with Lena's hand in his and Aurora's shimmering presence beside them, he realized they'd built something more, a family, unconventional but real. The festival reached its peak as the sky darkened, and a massive holographic projection lit up above the park, recreating the visions Felicity had seen in the Stargate. Worlds of green and gold, oceans that sang, and cities where humans and Zarathians lived as one. The crowd gasped, their faces illuminated by the light, and Darnell felt a shiver run down his spine. This was what they'd fought for, not just survival, but a future where differences didn't mean division. Felicity climbed back onto the stage, holding a small, glowing orb, a gift from Vera, symbolizing the alliance between their peoples. She raised it high, her voice ringing out. "This is for everyone who believed in us, and for everyone who will come after us." The orb flared, sending a cascade of light into the sky, where it burst into a constellation of stars that seemed to linger, defying the laws of physics. The crowd roared, humans and Zarathians alike, their voices a symphony of hope. Darnell pulled Felicity into his arms as she ran back to him, her face flushed with excitement. "Did I do good, Daddy?" "You did amazing, Bug," he said, kissing her forehead. "I'm so proud of you." Lena wrapped an arm around them both, her smile radiant. "We all are." As the festival wound down, Darnell and Lena sat on a bench, Felicity curled up between them, her head resting on Darnell's shoulder. Aurora's hologram hovered nearby, her form now a soft glow that blended with the lanterns. The park was quieter now, the crowd thinning as families returned home, but the sense of unity lingered like a warm ember. "Darnell," Lena said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. "What happens next?" He looked at her, his heart full. "We keep going. The Institute, the gate, all of it. We make sure kids like Felicity have a chance to shine." "And us?" she asked, her eyes searching his. Darnell took a deep breath, the words coming easier than he'd expected. "Us we figure out together. If you're in." Lena's smile was answer enough, but she leaned in, her lips brushing his in a kiss that felt like a promise. Felicity, half asleep, mumbled, "Told you so," and they both laughed, the sound light and free. Aurora's voice broke the moment, gentle but curious. "I have detected a new signal from the Stargate. It is faint, but it suggests other worlds. Other gates. The journey may not be over." Darnell looked up at the stars, the same ones Felicity had brought to life with her orb. "Let him come," he said, his voice steady. "We're ready." The festival ended with a final burst of music, and as the lanterns dimmed, Darnell carried Felicity back to their apartment, Lena walking beside him, Aurora's presence a quiet comfort. The future was uncertain, full of possibilities and challenges, but for the first time in years, Darnell wasn't afraid. He had his daughter, his family, and a purpose worth fighting for. And somewhere, deep beneath New Terra, the Stargate hummed softly, waiting for the next chapter to begin.